Good morning or almost afternoon, I guess, depending on where you might be in the US or outside of the US. It could be just about any time at all, I suppose. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen. I'm the editor and VP of streaming media, and welcome to our panel on OTT around the world or around the globe. And we're going to talk about OTT services going from the United States to other territories, as well as international OTT services and how they negotiate the complicated challenges and embrace the opportunities that come with expanding into additional markets. This is our biggest Streaming Media East Connect yet. We've got 33 panels and presentations total covering every streaming media and online video topic under the sun. And it's, as I said, it's our fourth Streaming Media Connect. We've got one more in August, but then we'll be back in person in Huntington Beach the first week of November. November 2nd and 3rd, so save the date for that, and we hope to see a lot of you in person on the beach in November. As always, all of these sessions will be archived on our YouTube channel. Steve Nathans Kelly will put the link to the YouTube channel in the chat. You can also find it by going to streamingmedia.com and clicking on the videos tab up near the top. A couple of housekeeping notes. The chat will be open during this panel, but if you have questions for our panelists, we encourage you to put them in the Q&A tab. That just makes it easier for us to keep track of them and make sure that they all get to the panelists by the end of the hour. And if we don't get a chance to answer your question during the panel, we'll save those questions and we'll send them to the panelists afterwards. I'd like to thank the diamond sponsor for Streaming Media East Connect, Signient, and we've got a brief video message from them to share with you now.
When the director calls action.
And action.
When the game is on.
Kick it up, it's good.
Or it's time to save the universe again. Media Shuttle is there. Trusted by more than 25,000 media companies, Media Shuttle delivers, making it easy and secure to send any size file anywhere fast. The journey begins with Media Shuttle portals, customized and branded for any project and designed to be so easy, your end users will love it. All while giving operations teams complete control through a simple yet powerful admin interface. Add users, set permissions, customize file delivery specs, and report on all activity. Blast off with proprietary acceleration technology. Media Shuttle moves your content anywhere in the internet-connected world at hyper speeds. Along the way, your files are protected. Our commitment to enterprise-grade security has made Media Shuttle a preferred tool with Hollywood studios, major sports leagues, broadcasters, and more. With Media Shuttle, your files are never handed over to Signient. File movement is orchestrated between the end user's workstation and your storage, whether on-prem or in the cloud. Your IT team simply provisions your storage, connecting it to the Media Shuttle cloud service, and Signient handles the rest. Get started on your Media Shuttle journey today. A journey without limits.
I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this panel, EZDRM, and EZDRM's Olga Kornienko will be joining us as one of the panelists this session. It's only fitting that Allan McLennan should moderate a panel about OTT around the world. I first met Allan in Gatwick Airport, I believe, on our way to a conference in Oslo, the Northern Waves conference there. So Allan, bring your camera up, turn your mic on, and join us. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Greetings from San Francisco. And greetings to everybody this morning here, this afternoon where you're at, or in the evening. Some of the issues that we're going to be talking about today are not so much announcing what companies are deploying across the borders, but really because of the issues that we're facing when it comes to capitalizing and benefiting from rolling new services into other territories around the world. Each of our panelists this morning are experts in this and have been doing it. And so in the course of our conversation, we're going to find out, what's different? What are the issues? What are the censorships? What are the challenges? What are the security concerns? And what really prompted you to make these decisions to take your companies across borders? And with that, as you saw in the opening, I'm sure you saw the names and the titles, but what I wanted to do is kick off with each one of them individually to give a little bit of background about themselves, about the company, and then we will, once we're finished that, we're going to launch into some questions for this discussion. First up, I'd like to introduce Carter Pilcher, who's the founder and CEO of ShortsTV. Carter, can you engage your camera and unmute? Carter.
Hello, Allan. Thank you for inviting me to join you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about Shorts? And if you can, maybe just how you got to Shorts real quick.
Sure. I'm an American, of course, but I was an investment banker living here in London, and we started the company actually in London, and we launched our first TV network in France. And then we took it across borders back to the United States and launched it in the United States. We've since launched a TV network, and now we're starting in Latin America and in India, and now we're starting to roll out OTT services behind them in a lot of these different territories. So our borders have been backwards. As an American, it's from the UK perspective, America is a foreign country.
You know what? You could live in America and across state boundaries. You could be in a foreign country.
Exactly.
You know, what can I say? Fantastic. Olga. Olga Kornienko is the co-founder and COO of EasyDRM. And in that, you have really uncovered a lot of issues around the world in deploying security. And give us a little bit of background, because that was helpful from Carter, about how you started this service and built this into a global organization. Olga?
Hi, Alan. Thank you. And welcome. Greetings from New York, everybody. I am, as Alan mentioned, Olga Kornienko, one of the co-founders and CEO of EZDRM. And we've actually started with an idea of having some sort of a streaming service, but the idea of a streaming service that we had with my business partner popped up in 2001, which obviously the world wasn't ready for a streaming service in 2001. But we based it on the idea of being able to protect your content and sell it using digital rights management. And we eventually grew to the idea that we don't need to have content or offer content because we are good at the security technology part of our business. So that's kind of where we came from. And we've been trying to promote the idea of DRM as a service in the cloud since 2003, seeing various different permeations and implementations of it come and go and change, and seeing where we are at right now.
Yeah, that's going to come up many times during the course of this conversation, I'm sure. Kerensa, Samanidis. Kerensa, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you're in London. It's late afternoon, early evening, so welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I worked in the OTT space for over 10 years, both as part of existing entities. So I was GM for Filmstruck when Warner Media were rolling that out internationally, and also with it for Acorn TV International. And I've since become a consultant, and most of the clients I work with are facing these kinds of international expansion, growth, strategic opportunities and challenges. And so I now work with a lot of other entities who are looking at growing and expanding their businesses in different markets.
No, that's fantastic. The operational component of this and where the issues pop up, to be able to have that resource to at least give some insight and experience to that, it would be very helpful. Archana, Archana is in Mumbai. Welcome. It is truly evening, late evening there. It is a pleasure to have you. Z Media is certainly something that is a strong entity around the world. And tell us a little bit about yourself and about Z.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me. And like you said, I'm dialing in from Mumbai. What I do is handle the global business for a streaming media platform called Z5. Z5 sits under the larger umbrella of the global media conglomerate C. And with Z5, what I've had is a fabulous journey of launching it first in India in February of 2018, and then subsequently taking it across 197 countries, which has been quite an adventure, learning about different markets, their dynamics and all of that. And I think I'm standing on absolutely the verge of launching in the most exciting market, which is a market that a lot of you are actually sitting in right now, USA, which has a large South Asian population. And well, I'm literally weeks away from that big launch. So I'm terribly excited. And I look forward to sharing some part of my adventure and learnings with all of you today.
You know what, that's coming right back to what Carter said. He's been taking it the other direction. You're the one that is bringing it here. And that actually, for those of us that, you know, take it for granted, that insight is going to be very helpful. And getting to that point, I'm just going to kick it off with kind of a straightforward question. And I'm going to start right with Carter, because you're the one that is really has taken this out. And what is the first and foremost question that required to consider stepping out of an established market area? You were comfortable, it was convenient in London. And then what was the first question that really popped into mind when you wanted to make that decision? It's like, okay, here we're going. We just came out of the pandemic. The market now is booming. You've already got your feet wet in different parts of the world, but now you're making that step to really expand. What was the first question?
Well, I think the first question that everybody faces is, does it make economic sense, right? And you have to really run the numbers, make sure you have a strong business case, because of course, as even if you're launching back into the US, there are always more problems, more costs, more challenges than you ever expect. So I think the real key is there a strong business case to launch in this new territory?
And by business case, you're meaning from the licensing costs justify the growth of the market, the numbers that you're looking at? I mean,
do your projection, do the profits, potential profit outweigh the potential cost? I think it's very simple. You know, there are licensing costs, there are technical costs, there are DRM costs. Olga is very happy to help everybody. But you know, all those things cost a lot of money. And as Archana can tell you, I'm sure that America is way more expensive than you ever thought it would be. So it takes it's a big business decision to make these launches.
Well, Kerensa, I'm sure you would agree with that, but you've been handling the international component with Warner and with Acorn. Is that kind of the first question? And then what does that morph into a second question? And then I'm going to be going right to Archana and right over to Olga because she'll manage that. Kerensa.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely 100% agree. I mean, there has to be economic sense and there has to be an ROI to international expansion. So I think the first question that you need to answer, first of all, is, do we want to expand outside of our core market or markets? And if so, then there's a whole host of other questions that you need to answer to understand the pace of rollouts, as well as also the prioritization of markets that you want to roll out into. It's very complex. And I think depending on the type of organization, depending on the, if you're working within a bigger entity like Warner Media, for example, that has an established footprint globally, then there are opportunities to tap into leveraging existing footprints in other markets, and as opposed to coming in as a brand new brand and a brand new entity. If you are brand new, then obviously trying to understand what the potential is within each market that you may have some kind of fit or potential in. There's a huge matrix that normally I end up drawing up, which you have to compare all the different pros and cons of each market. And there are multiple of those, from regulatory to content availability to cost of marketing to potential scale to the competition. And they're all very different types of questions that you need to answer. So there's no simple, straightforward answer to those.
Back to the economic model.
Absolutely.
The fact of it is, Archana, how about yourself? I mean, right now it was announced the last couple of days, exactly to what you just mentioned, Kerensa, is like AT&T's Warner Media is, merging with Discovery. That is an international play about to happen heavily. You're nodding your head, Archana. What is the biggest issue that you faced coming into the States? Let's kind of hone in on that.
Yeah, no, I completely echo in full both the points made by Carter and Kerensa that, for the economics to make sense, there are a whole lot of factors. I would think the top three undoubtedly are the costs that get linked to content, marketing, and technology, right? If you were to look at my specific case, for example, we're a South Asian company that's making, content for the South Asian base. So, your first port of call is to take this to affinity markets where, the content affinity is going to be the greatest. So when you're getting out of India, for example, it's only natural to go across the SAARC markets in the first instance because they're so culturally similar to your own context. So when you're going out of India, you naturally take it first to Bangladesh or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Nepal, and because that audience pretty much is consuming the same content that you're creating here for the Indians. But with time you go further afield, and then you're looking for that cohort of South Asians and how many South Asians sort of exist in these multiple global markets, apart from all of the other things that we need to do, because streaming is still getting to have an affinity across the globe. And you have very diverse markets. You've got first world markets like the US and Japan and Singapore and Australia, but you also have emerging markets, right? And they are still highly dependent on mobile. They're not watching it on connected devices. There are different levels of sophistry. So I think pretty much in sync with all of them, when you're saying you're weighing the pros and cons of what it costs you and what's going to be the benefit and how much audience you're actually going to tap at what cost. We also have the unique advantage of already having our linear play across the globe. So a bit of my marketing is also sort of, supported by my linear channels, which are globally present. To specifically come to the point of coming into the US, I know there are 5.5 million South Asians there. I know that Bollywood went across borders long before for reasons quite unfathomable by a lot of us. We take great pains to tell people that we in India do not run around trees and sing songs the way you see in the movies. And yet that seems to be like something that has fascinated the globe, and people are fascinated by Bollywood movies across. So the crossover happened some time ago. So we're following through to find those South Asians out there in the US who might have a yen to watch this kind of content and to capture their hearts.
It's very funny because most of our exposure is to that, but the impact importance of your channels is really key to your audience, and that's to be respected and appreciated. Olga, when it comes to these issues that we've been identified in the economic model, I'd have to think from your experience over the years of both back in the day when you were launching a product that was going to be international as an OTT, well, at that time, an on-demand service, but now moving into identifying the critical need for security. To start a little bit back at the time and how now today services like Archana's and Carter are coming to you to protect it. And I'd have to think that's across all screens. That's not just there are laptops and PCs, but also all the devices and the needs and the security that are on those devices. How important is that?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because people start talking about costs, and we do hear a lot of conversation about costs of DRM, cost of starting DRM up and whatnot. And we've always prided on launching our business as a cloud service, a microservice, or whatever the term is popular of the time. If you come across a solution that is a DRM as a service, it is a very minimal cost. And it does allow you to actually then not be concerned with the cost of the security, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things is probably one of the most important things, because why would you take your service, put in all the effort and all the infrastructure and think, you know, keep in mind all the stuff that Kerensa was talking about, and then put it out there and have it be stolen. So you have to protect your assets and you have to protect your content and your revenue, which is basically, as we all know, why we do this in the first place, is because it is a business and we are looking to bring new and interesting content to people, but we are a business at the end of the day. So keeping security costs in mind as an incremental business, as an incremental cost, it actually allows you to then think about your business, your solution, and what you're really there for, and see if it stands on its own merit. And if in the previous times where the DRM and the security market was so spread out and so broken up into different pieces, now it is getting very close to being very seamless. And at the end of the day, if the consumer doesn't know your video is secure, that is the main goal of what we do, is making sure that they can view it when they want to, how you want them to, without knowing there's a security level behind it.
Right, and I think you just tapped into something, how they don't know. What about country to country to country to country to country censorships? I mean, you raised an interesting point there when it comes to not having them know, but they don't know if it's been censored by a particular government or, you know, service provider. I mean, how often does that come in?
Well, for us as a technology owner, we don't come across it because we are not the ones controlling the content. I'm guessing for Carter, it might come in as a bigger issue. And in our pre-chat about this, Eric mentioned about the fact that certain songs that you would never expect them to, are like Jump is banned in certain countries you wouldn't totally expect them to be.
It's a happy song.
One of those random things that somebody who is launching a service would need to know. And then with having DRM security, you might actually be able to say that like certain videos cannot be played in geographical regions. And even if they somehow brought into that geographical region, you won't be able to play it back, which would pretty much allow you to protect your brand, your reputation, and, you know, the legal side of things as well.
Yeah, no question. Carter, you were, you know, you just mentioned how many markets that you are in and considering going into. How does censorship play into this? Is that a critical component? Are you finding that to be an issue?
I think it's not really censorship so much as different regulatory environments. So in some markets, you know, we went into one market where the length of time that a kiss could be on screen is an issue. And so we have to clear each of our films, movies, short movies, in each market and in different ways. So the edits we might do for America might be 0, but maybe in India, they would be extensive because the several factors, smoking or things like that, are not permitted on screen. So every market has a different regulatory environment and a very different way of enforcing it. It takes, so you really can take the same movie, for instance, and have to do something different in every single, you know, some markets in Europe, you have to say that they're smoking before and after. In the US, you don't. In India, you can't have smoking at all. So it takes a lot of effort to make sure that each market is getting compliant material.
You know, I have to say, plus, congratulations. I believe you have all 13 of the Academy Award nomination individuals on your screen right now, being able to show and demonstrate. Have you had to edit those?
Well, the Oscar-nominated shorts, when we release them theatrically, we release them in India, in America, and Europe. We didn't. We have to run them through compliance and get them certified.
Mhm.
And in India, probably we did have to do some edits to some of the scenes. But you know, it's a very it's quite a process in each country. They're very different restrictions. Certainly, in the Middle East, we have more restrictions, and some things we can't release there. But it creates a big, you know, a complex issue. I'm sure when Archana brings Indian content back to the US, they'll find that many of the things that they couldn't show that now they can show.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Archana, that'd be perfect. I mean, you're the target there for a few minutes. Now you're the opportunity. Is that something that you've been mindful in?
Oh, absolutely. I've been grappling with it in big ways. And, you know, when you deal with disparate markets and, you know, to echo what, you know, Carter mentioned. So, you know, I had this unique thing when I was launching in Bangladesh, for example. My simple advert had to go through 3 cuts because apparently one of the girls in the advert was wearing a sleeveless outfit. And I was shocked just by virtue of the fact that she was wearing an outfit that was sleeveless was offensive to their culture, right? So I had to get that changed and, you know, sort of organize things. Have an instance in Pakistan, we've created a very, very, you know, popular original called Churels. It's about 4 women who are sort of all done in by the men in their lives, and they get together and they form this vigilante group, and they're out to sort of go out with justice. But it had such a hue and cry in Pakistan, and you know, people were outraged that we showed some, you know, shades of homosexuality, or you know, there was a scene of child molestation. And but the interesting part was, while they went up in arms, and you know. This was the government and the regulatory bodies, but it's a new Pakistan. So the consumer sort of stood up and, you know, really made a hue and cry about the fact that the government pulled it down. And it was interesting that the government actually had to bow down to consumer opinion and views because they were so loud and so outraged. So we're living in new times, and though, you know, governments have rigid outlooks, I think the new consumer has a global outlook, and they are voicing their views on freedom and expression and all of that. In India, we're sort of going down the route of self-regulatory. So the OTT organizations are coming together and trying very hard to say that, you know, give us that freedom. We will self-regulate. We will have broad guidelines, but beyond that, allow us this little flexibility. So it's different for different markets, like Carter said, and it's pretty interesting.
Well, Allan, one of the things, if I could just add, that is just on the back of that we've been experiencing is this, not only the regulatory side, but there's a lot of, as we're moving into these ad-supported channels all over Europe and in America, nobody knows what they are, because some of them are programmed, some of them are not programmed. Some countries in Europe call them, they call it a VOD service. Other ones call it a linear service. We just had one regulator who came back and said, we don't know what to call it. And we don't know if you need a license for it or not. And we don't know if we even can count it against your existing license, because we really don't have a way to classify. So what's happening in the world of OTT and all, you know, Pluto TV, and it's an explosion of all these free ad-supported streaming channels. Mm-hmm. It's created a regulatory environment, at least in Europe and in Asia, where the regulators haven't even caught up yet.
Yeah, no, you know what, that we're going to get back to that. I want to ask Kerensa a little bit about how the evolution of this, because you've been working on this for well over a decade. You've seen how it first started and how there was, you know, a grappling of this kind of key issue as far as censorship and moving forward. And now you're seeing this evolution that has got up today, where they finally woken up, and it's like, oh, there's an issue here, and we don't know really what to call you now, because you used to be a game, used to be, oh, a few of my relatives might be watching on VOD, but now it's mainstream. What has been your observation? Because, you know, history will dictate the direction that will go, and what Carter just identified, we're kind of where we were. Now it's been recognized. What's your observation on that?
Well, I mean, obviously, the growth of OTT has forced a lot of different cultures, legislators, regulators to address certain key things. I mean, even with the evolution of platforms like YouTube, which are sort of forced to be kind of self-regulated in a way, and Facebook and these other big massive social platforms. I mean, there's a whole kind of convergence between digital and OTT, generally speaking. So, I mean, I think it's difficult to I suppose police it, generally speaking, but I would say that all of these points are just really reinforce the need to actually have local legal expertise when you're actually moving into a new market, to understand first of all what the key regulatory issues are, whether that relates to content limitations and censorship challenges, whether it relates to for example, I was launching a service in South Africa, and the regulator there really insisted that they use their own age rating, which you would have to pay for to actually go through. And so, I mean, that was a huge cost, unexpected cost that we weren't aware of, which really sort of slowed down the process and made us reassess the prioritization of how we rolled out in different markets. So I think it's always just really key that you work with somebody in market who really knows the real legal and regulatory challenges of that market, so that you can make that assessment early on. And if you decide to progress, then at least your eyes are completely open to the challenges and the requirements that you need to comply with.
You know, you raise a very key point, and that is working with someone in their local markets that you're deploying in. You know, how important is it to build a staff, to build, you know, to really create the offering and have it be resident in the countries that you're deploying in? You know, there's this kind of little misnomer, because we're all digital, we're all driven with the cloud, we all are able to manage those kinds of services at different places around the world. But in reality, as Carter brought up with FAST, you know, there's advertising aspects of that you need on-site representation. Do you? You have legal governances that are required. That's a given that you just said. How important it is to have a, in this case, because we're discussing how we're going to roll out in different across borders, how important it is to have a team resident and growing in those given markets. Archana, you've been doing that. You said that you're about ready to launch in New York. I mean, do you have a dedicated team there? Is there, you know, how is it, one or two people, or is it decent sized?
So we've kind of gone with something similar to the Netflix model, where for the larger part, it is a centralized team that's sitting out of Mumbai. So all of the key functions sit out of Mumbai, whether it's product or technology, you know, content, even marketing to an extent. My own understanding and learning is that as long as I'm continuing in the realm of South Asian content, I really can afford to have the team sit centrally, and I can have a skeletal marketing team in key markets. The moment I move from the South Asian content piece to actually going into local for local, which is also happening side by side in certain markets, then I definitely need you know, people from the local market who have the right nuances of content and storytelling. I would fail if I didn't have that. There is no way to do that remotely, for sure.
By having that, are you looked upon in more favorable light by the regulators in that country, in that territory?
You know, across the globe now, there is a new mood that's setting. And, you know, I saw it initially in Bangladesh, but today I see it in Indonesia and in Australia. And they're dishing it out to even the bigger players like Netflix, where they're very clear that if you want to come and play in their market, you have to also nurture the local content creators and have a percentage of local content on your platform. So
Yeah,
essentially, if I'm going into Indonesia, I cannot just go in and have a lot of content that is dubbed in various languages and not have a percentage of content that is made by Indonesians, produced and directed by Indonesians. So I guess it's just a way of ensuring that they nurture their own culture, their own context, and their own arts, and ensure that you're not being completely taken over by the entity that's coming.
Yeah, I remember when that was just an ask, years ago. It's like, we'd like you to consider this. Now hearing that, it's a reality. Carter, are you facing that? Right?
Yes,
right now?
absolutely. But I'm kind of
Building teams too?
Definitely, we're building teams, and definitely, like Archana said a bit, we have a great team here in London. We have some local teams, one in Mumbai and one in the US. And we have lawyers and other teams that are out there helping us as we roll into new market. But one thing that is happening is that not only are governments requiring local content, but we're all finding that local content, local culture is the best way to create an audience. So Archana is bringing
Fair enough.
Indian content, and she's not targeting everybody in America. She's got a very specific target of the American audience, and that's South Asians living in America is her primary target. We're finding with films that as we build a catalog for different languages, India is actually a vast country, different languages, different cultures. So we've been building a Maharashtri catalog, Karelian catalog, one from Karnataka, targeting different areas of the country, and actually seeing viewership grow around films and productions made in different parts of the country. So I think absolutely there is the government push, but I think the reason all of us are moving so quickly to comply is that we're finding audiences are very, very local and really excited about local content.
Which raises a question for me for Olga. Are providers starting to come to you prior to their deployment into countries to ask them about these issues from a security standpoint? And even more so, are governments asking you? Are you becoming a resource for the governments to say, how do we control this?
Well, we get more requests from the customers saying, well, we're going to deploy into this country. And we don't necessarily have as a technology company, people don't come to us, say, do you have a team there? They want to know if we have servers there, because at the end of the day, what we do is issue out licenses, and you want the quickest, the most seamless response. So having licenses and servers all over the globe is kind of basically our perspective to things. But people do come and say, well, we're looking to launch into Russia or India or whatever. What do we need to know? And our first response to that is know the device market, because at the end of the day, you're trying to reach a specific audience. You have to know how they consume the content. And looking at it from a technology perspective, I can tell you that the devices that are more popular in the US would obviously not be the devices that are more popular in India or Russia or what have you. And if you're launching into some countries, you have to keep in mind that people consume content on TVs. And in some countries, TVs are 10, 12 years old. I mean, I just replaced a TV that was 12 years old. But with that comes a whole new different set of technology challenges, like can you do dash to that, or do you have to do other technologies? And you also got to keep in mind that within the US, you have a specific bubble. Once you go to, let's say, Asia, you're running into companies and countries that may not be serviced by American DRM technologies, such as Huawei. They no longer accept wideband as a DRM technology. So we got to start working with countries and companies to see what the market is actually requesting. Because if you walk into a market in China or anywhere in Asia where Huawei is prevalent, you will not be able to reach a good percentage of your clients or of your users if you're just assuming they'll be able to use the following technology. So you got to know not only what content would work, but what the devices are and how things would play back on those devices.
Yeah, you know, when you're trying to tap into a market that's really wanting to explore this new environment, yes, we have the upper echelon, upper percentages that have been subscribing to these services for some time. But as we move into FAST, where it's free advertising supported television, it's still going to have to be engaged with some sort of device. You know, and you know, the growth of Roku in the US, the Amazon Fire, the Fire Stick. You know, you're saying that those are the types of devices, those devices more than they're actually a mobile device. Is that what I'm interpreting here?
Well, you got to know what the device is that is popular in some countries that you're trying to penetrate. Because if you
give us an example,
are
give us
into,
some examples of devices that may be in different countries that our listeners right now may not be aware of. But we are, but give me an example of a couple other than Roku and Fire.
well, part of it is being able to, if you're streaming to, if you're using an application that is going to run on a TV, on old smart TVs, you got to know how old those TVs are and what technology is supported on those TVs. We are currently seeing some people stream to old TVs using technology called Silverlight, if anybody remembers that.
Sure.
And that's not something that you would come across in the US because people try to update their TVs. But when you're streaming to a 10-year-old TV, you get a completely different world. In a lot of the Asian countries, you get a lot more people who have a lot newer phones, and in some countries you get people who have older phones. And you also have to keep in mind what the internet speeds are, and you have to keep in mind that you can only, in a certain country, like Carter said, you have to make sure that the kiss is only X amount short, but the quality is also this, and it's being viewed on this device, so it has to be streamed in that format. And I think it's a lot of those things you have to keep in mind, and while trying to hopefully not get your content stolen while you're doing all of this.
Just a little point.
Yeah.
You haven't stolen, you know, but just to share with us, it's like you're bringing up a really important point, because the audience is in and of itself to grow. What we're talking about is taking services across borders. You know, like I started to allude to, the upper social economic audience has already been playing with that. They have the new televisions, they have the new devices, they're already engaged, they're subscribing, they get it. The lower social economic group is much more limited to what they can possibly have. And just for the heck of it, you know, a couple months ago, I had a 20-plus-year-old Sony 27-inch Sony Trinitron CRT television, state of the art in its day. Very proud of that television at its time. Member of the family. But the thing about it was, it's like, okay, it started to get dated. You know, I really don't want to have a cable box attached to it. I want to go with something different. I was able to jury rig through a device, coax cable, a USB connection, and put a Roku stick on it. And here I am able to watch whatever is on Roku on that very dated device, and it looks really good. My son took it and has got it in, where he lives, because I wasn't going to buy him a flat screen monitor. So with the families that are in slower social economic communities, they have old televisions. They have televisions that are, that they can afford, that they watch their programming on. These devices that you're talking about in these areas in Asia, and that we're wanting to capitalize on and be able to provide these kinds of services. What other devices? You said Silverlight, but what's Huawei offering right now? What are they putting out in the market that you're talking about for that kind of security?
Well, the new Huawei phone, and don't quote me on the name, please, but the new Huawei phone with the Kerensa chip no longer supports WisePlay. Huawei has its own version of their DRM security that is called, I'm sorry, it no longer supports Widevine. It has its own version of DRM security called Wise Play. And if you intend to stream any DRM protected content to that device, you have to stream it using their security, or you have to stream it obviously without security. But you also have to keep in mind that if you are protecting your Dash content with either Play Ready or Widevine, and you're trying to reach a market where Huawei phones are prevalent, you will not be able to reach them. The content would just simply not play. And in the US, I was talking to a friend who said that in the US, they get maybe 0.5% of requests from Huawei devices. So it really is a non-issue. But once you get out of the US, you can freely buy these phones. You can use them. And if you have a big, pretty phone that you can watch content on while you are sitting, I don't know, on the subway somewhere, then you can't play this content. It creates a problem. And obviously your streaming service would not be as popular as people would mention that. And you got to keep that in mind as you are building out your service for a foreign market.
You know, you just touched on a couple other things here. We're talking about Huawei, we're talking about devices, we're talking about services. To capture a market crossing borders, it's expensive to go in and build your own brand, to come in and build it as your own service offering. How important is it to, like, for example, Carter with Z, an established entity and brand within India, how important is it to consider partnering with a service and offering like Z or Archana as you're coming in the States? How important is it for you to partner with another service offering so you automatically and immediately have an audience from that point? Carter.
Archana and I should chat afterwards. I'm sure we probably could do lots of things together. But it is a big and important part of what you do. And our partners, I think Archana will agree. Our partners, when we went into India, we had a fabulous partnership with Tata Sky, which is one of the big direct-to-home satellite systems. And now we're working closely with Airtel and Dish and several of the other platforms. And I think those, but it was Tata Sky and the guys at Tata Sky who helped us get through all the regulatory hurdles that we kind of agreed together that we wanted to bring our ShortsTV network to India. I think you can never underestimate the importance of a good, solid partner who knows the market and is able to really help you find your way through. I'm sure, Archana, you think the same thing in America.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's absolutely nothing to defer on that. Speed to market is greatly enhanced when you have a partner that knows the market. Your economies of scale and your cost is reduced because in some way it's now two entities that are planning the distribution instead of just one, and you're combining your might and your strength, which only makes you stronger. And therefore I completely agree with Carter. You just need to look for partners that bring the right synergies to the table, and if the synergies are there is only good to be had from a partnership.
Yeah, no, it seems like that's a step that is required if you really are ambitious, is to be able to accomplish and succeed on your overall goal. Kerensa, you've been, just real quick, in the last 5 minutes that we have here, you've been doing this with other smaller niche programmings. Have you been looking and reaching out to an established player in the given markets that you're looking to deploy in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think distribution is all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, distribution is always a critical part of any new market launch. I guess it's just what the order of play is. Do you launch with a partner, or do you want to launch as a D2C offer first of all and establish your brand before then engaging with partners? And there are pros and cons of each. And I think actually when you're looking globally, there are benefits to having those different approaches in different markets. So there may be some adjacent markets where your brand has more of a direct fit. You believe that the opportunities for building scale with a direct customer base is going to be either easier or preferable or worth the investment and the time, which may require more resource upfront, but or more investment upfront, but it might be justified to do it that way. Whereas in other markets, and particularly markets like India, where I know a lot of companies that I work with are focused, and particularly other markets like Latin America, which are very much developing and growing quickly, and they see significant opportunities, but they're very culturally different, even just from a, like a billing mechanism perspective. The way that customers pay for services and engage with services are very different. And I think it's really important for brands to recognize when there are distinctive, very differences within markets. And rather than sort of rushing out and trying to, go D2C from day one, sometimes those are the markets that are far preferable to actually partner with a local expert who can, first of all, give you brand credibility, but also help with scale and also all of the local and cultural issues that's really vital to know about.
So adding into what Kerensa is saying, I think the biggest example of the OTT space is OTTs partnering with telcos, because I think it's very synergetic, right? In telcos, I think voice is a dying business, and they really want data to be thriving, and video is what data thrives on. So it's a very symbiotic kind of equation there between telcos and OTTs. And in the first instance, getting into a market via a telco, which gives you both distribution and marketing, turns out to be a really conducive way to get in.
And you're bringing up a point about confidentiality and privacy and all the issues that come with that data. That's rather key. Olga, is that an area of focus that you're seeing exploding within the overall world market, and that is confidentiality and privacy and securing that in addition to content security?
Oh, we are more focused on content security, and we are actually, the way our system is structured, we don't actually get to see any of the privacy information of who is actually watching what. So we are strictly focused on the technology aspect of it, but it definitely does come into play with various technology, with the various privacy aspects when you start looking into like GDPR and what can and cannot be used as part of, just the technology request strain to see, how the license goes and what information can be sent through.
Yeah, personalizations and confidentiality is something that we've all been grappling with for many years when it comes to, now that we're expanding the market and we're reaching into different cultures, different societies that bringing this kind of information and entertainment to, and also being able to allow, we lost someone.
Carter.
But as we're coming into this, we're now having to really recognize this need to be private and to have the confidentialities available. We're in the last 5 minutes of this panel, and Eric, do you have some questions from the audience that you'd like to share, or should we just continue on until?
No, there are a couple of questions here. And this one was targeted at Archana, but I think everyone can address it. Beyond any possible regulatory or cultural considerations taken into account for South Asia, how will Z's content be aimed specifically for the US to be differentiated from the content intended for South Asia? And I guess that gets to Dom Robinson simply typed the word localization with a question mark in the Q&A. So I assume there's interest in that discussion. He's referring to translation and subtitling. We can get to that in a moment. But what about customizing your content to the various markets?
So, localization of content for the American context is going to be a secondary thing that I would attempt. In the first instance, like I mentioned, I'm really trying to get to the extended South Asian audience itself. Like Carter mentioned, I would probably be getting into a more broad-minded market where the regulatory structures are a little more freer. So content which was censored elsewhere, would have the freedom of airing with less inhibition for sure in your market. We are ensuring that we have subtitling in English across all of our content. So when it does the first instance of crossover, much like we're watching Money Heist and Dark and all of that, because those are lovely pieces of content that have crossed their cultural context and are being watched in the language of your comfort, we would imagine that Bollywood and all of the content that we're taking across should be accessible to the English-speaking audience in terms of both subtitling and dubbing. But otherwise, in terms of localization, it's more in terms of ensuring that you are doing great local storytelling. Because I think what is actually selling across the globe is authenticity. And people are really fascinated by good local storytelling. So if you're telling the story from any land, any foreign land, and you're telling it true to form, I think it's greatly appreciated in diverse audiences.
And if I can just chime in, there was a great show on Netflix that really did a fabulous job of transcending both South Asians in America and in India. It was called, I think, the Matchmaker.
It is Matchmaker.
Yeah.
And I think it's just an amazing example of how, even if you're targeting a very specific audience, you can build content that really reaches everybody. I'm in England and everybody in our office has watched it.
Yes, because it's about the South Asian in America, right? And there are a couple of generations of them that have formed. So when you form stories around that, I would imagine that you would create great connect.
Yeah.
The fastest growing segment within Netflix is, the translations and dubbing for Spanish content, Swedish content, Finnish content. That's new content that's coming in that the US viewer is finding really compelling. So having that kind of capability is certainly something that we have to look at moving over into. And driving and building audiences. It just adds more eyes, and that's important, especially when we move into fast and as we start providing that to different audiences as well. One other thing, and just closing up here, Eric, unless you have another question that you'd like to.
There are a couple of questions here that are fairly specific and technical, and we can forward those to the panelists for them to answer offline afterwards, and then wrap up here.
Okay, fantastic. There's some key points that came out of this discussion, and thank you, Kerensa, Archana, Olga, and Carter. We identified the need in the local markets to have local markets, to market teams, lawyers, production. All of that is really key when you're considering how you're going to cross borders. We looked at localization, as we just talked about, the language, the critical nature of having the content available for those that want to see, the security, the confidentiality of the data, of the content itself, so it's not pirated and shared. And as we all know, that in different parts of the world, the uncles and aunts share content with the nieces and nephews wherever they're at, in whatever little township they're in. They share everything. And then mostly the implementation of these services. It's really key to have implementation partners, whether it's identifying an existing provider in a marketplace or teaming up with someone that allows for that kind of capability. Not every service provider has a full build out service that can go in and actually develop this and to provide this. No content provider has that security. There's a need to pull it all together. So these are key points that we've identified in this conversation that are required. So thank you, everybody, for being with us and the audience, and I appreciate that. And if there's any questions, Eric shared all of our contact information within the chat, and happy to connect and have those conversations. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
everyone. Yes.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to get technical in a half hour here at Streaming Media East Connect with a series of tech talks. So hope to see some of you back then. And again, thanks to all of our panelists, and thanks again to EasyDRM for sponsoring this panel, and to Signiant for sponsoring, for being the diamond sponsor for all of Streaming Media East Connect.
When the director calls action.
And action.
When the game is on.
Pick it up, it's good.
Or it's time to save the universe again. Media Shuttle is there. Trusted by more than 25,000 media companies, Media Shuttle delivers, making it easy and secure to send any size file anywhere fast. The journey begins with Media Shuttle portals, customized and branded for any project and designed to be so easy, your end users will love it. All while giving operations teams complete control through a simple yet powerful admin interface. Add users, set permissions, customize file delivery specs, and report on all activity. Blast off with proprietary acceleration technology. Media Shuttle moves your content anywhere in the internet-connected world at hyper speeds. Along the way, your files are protected. Our commitment to enterprise-grade security has made Media Shuttle a preferred tool with Hollywood studios, major sports leagues, broadcasters, and more. With Media Shuttle, your files are never handed over to Signiant. File movement is orchestrated between the end user's workstation and your storage, whether on-prem or in the cloud. Your IT team simply provisions your storage, connecting it to the Media Shuttle cloud service, and Signiant handles the rest. Get started on your Media Shuttle journey today, a journey without limits.